Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command World War II, World at War. It is April of 1943, Chongqing, the capital of China, has fallen. We're driving inland toward Langkao, the next capital of China. In Russia, Moscow has fallen. There seems to be a trend that Allied capitals are falling, but there is now an alternative capital at Kubinezhev for the Soviet Union as well. We're dealing with the fact that the Soviets are still very strong. They still have a lot of units, and eventually we're going to get overwhelmed here, but we're trying to keep the momentum up while we have the advantage for as long as we possibly can. Meanwhile, let's see what else. In North Africa, Egypt has fallen, and the capital of Cairo is our own. We're advancing into Jerusalem currently, but we probably don't have enough strength there to take that capital for a while. We're investing heavily to try and convince the Syrians to come to our side. If they do, then we can probably crush the Allies between two sides and take Jordan as well as Jerusalem, which is certainly something that I would like to see accomplished here as quickly as possible. Let's see. Meanwhile, in western North Africa, the Americans have taken Algeria, but we still have a little bit of a buffer between our own positions and the Americans, because the Americans haven't declared war on Tunis yet. Until they do, it's going to be difficult for them to get at our forces in Libya. In the Mediterranean, the Italian Navy is dead. We've put a few garrison units in Italy, but if the Americans make a serious effort to land in Italy, we probably won't be able to stop them. We do have one Italian U-boat and one German U-boat in the Mediterranean, or transiting there, but things don't look great. Meanwhile, yeah, that just happened. I don't really have a lot of money left to do anything with, and we've already done our orders for this turn, so let's go ahead and jump ahead. I think we'll be at the end of April or very beginning of May of 1943 when we get our turn back. Partisan activity in China, or in Manchuria. And away we go. So we'll see what the Allies do to disrupt us. I don't know if this is real or not. We get the activity that Admiral Yamamoto is killed by Allied aircraft. Meanwhile, there's the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Apparently, we just developed level 3 tanks. That's pretty sweet. But there's no enemy troops in Warsaw. And as far as I don't know if Yamato was removed as a player that we can do stuff with or not in-game. I think those are just hard-coded historical events, but I don't know if they have any actual impact in the game. Aww. Well, the Americans have just declared war on Tunis, which means that these guys are going to get steamrolled, and then probably in the next turn or so, the Americans will be able to advance into the desert against us in Libya. So we may need to consider pulling our troops in the Jerusalem area out in an effort to save what we can and sprint it across to maybe to the Russian front or into Greece or wherever we can safely go now that the Mediterranean is an American lake. Russian reinforcements near Grozny. We're trying to get to Baku and take the what's left of the Caucasus. Meanwhile, Allied anti-submarine efforts here driving our subs back in both the North Atlantic and in the Mediterranean there. The game is thinking. Fleets are moving. We are none the wiser. Referencing the, down here in the lower left, sometimes when you get these pauses, is the only real indication you get about what the Allies or what the enemy is doing. So this sub is up to level 3 experience. It's the grizzled old captain from Das Boot. Meanwhile, the Americans have destroyed the small force in Tunis. The British have a lot of aircraft here in the Chinese theater. Fortunately for us, we have a lot of Japanese aircraft in the theater as well to act as interceptors, and the Japanese have very advanced technology on aircraft right now. It's the one area that we've really researched well for both the Japanese and the Germans is level 3 fighter aircraft, and now we have level 3 tanks for the Germans too, which will be nice if we ever get a pause where we can upgrade our units. I haven't seen the Russians get to level 3 tanks yet. I've seen level 2 tanks, but I haven't seen level 3 tanks yet. Soviets are advancing here near the Balkans on the city of Pskov. So it seems like a concerted Soviet offensive here in April of 43. They just pushed the Italians back into Helsinki on the verge of destruction. We really need to bring reinforcements south. Shit, they almost destroyed that armored unit there near Poti. I wonder if there's like a penalty for using your armored units in mountains, because that seemed really easy, and that was just a Russian core unit. It wasn't a full-strength army or anything like that, and they did quite a bit of damage on level, an upgraded tank. Not a level 2, but still an upgraded tank. Meanwhile, the British near Grunin, trying to get their commandos out of there, launching an attack. I don't think they're technically commandos. Maybe they are, I'm not sure. It looks like a core unit. You know what would be really interesting is if we could punch through here and then cut this pocket of Soviet troops off and destroy them. There's a couple areas where it'd be nice to pocket them, but the Soviets seem to, even with the destruction of Moscow, draw so many reinforcements that, destroying them seems kind of like a futile effort. Again, I feel like the fall of Moscow should be more significant to the Russians than it is in game. Soviet armor up here, launching attacks against our core. Near Vyzhny Vinnyk. To those of you who correct me on my pronunciations, you can't actually see the second name of that city, so maybe you can't correct me, because I don't actually know what it is. Oh, there goes, was that our Finnish fighter unit there that just got obliterated there? Southeast of Tallinn? Lame. Alright, so Soviets issuing some reinforcements. They're moving some units around. The Americans are advancing into Tunis with some mechanized and infantry. Those will be all over our troops near Tripoli next turn. Some anti-aircraft guns here in the Caucasus. I was hoping to go down the coastal route here and break into the interior, kind of flank the Soviet forces in the Caucasus, but it looks like I'm going to need to pull that armor unit back because it's basically destroyed. It's level 1. That's a bad day for that sub. Destroyers everywhere. Retreat to the ice. Okay. So we got about maybe a year till D-Day, depending on what is the American trigger for that. But I think we'll lose North Africa, and if the Americans launch a historical invasion of Italy as well, we'll be in serious trouble. You can see down here in the lower left it says transport move, which means I'm assuming they're moving their troops that are on troop transports. Planning. Alright, so now they're placing some of their new units. New engineer unit to the south of Stalingrad, because that's just what we need to face. More Allied entrenchments. Tunis surrenders. The Allies plunder 12 MPPs. And Crete continues to be an issue for them. Meanwhile, it looks like it's a sandstorm in the desert, so our Air Force there is not going to be able to do anything. Just great. Alright, Tunisia surrenders, Axis military, blah blah blah. So there's an armored unit there in the desert in Libya that was suffering attrition losses. Meanwhile, the Germans get a cavalry division and the 1st Panzer Heavies are arriving. So we'll put the cavalry division in Bremen. They'll be dealing with the British at Grunin, and then we're going to put the armor to the west here near Memel. We'll get them to the front as quickly as we can. I don't think I can really do anything with these troops that are cutting off these British units here, other than the fact that their supply's low because they don't have a port, so that's good for us. But that's kind of the Western European section right now. Well, note to self. Don't attack that American submarine, because it is going to obliterate you. But the American cruiser, less so. So we'll do some damage to that. Badly damaged their heavy cruiser there. You know, all these guys are trying to get these guys dug in the western desert, at least act as a tripwire for us, buy us a little bit of time. Honestly, I'm debating pulling the Africa Corps out altogether. That might not be a terrible idea. Move it to the Russian theater. Meanwhile, Grozny... I'd like to try and knock Grozny out. There we go. Nice little hit there. Oh, shit. He can only move one hex. That tank is probably dead. I'm assuming the Soviets are going to advance against it. Unless maybe we threaten their rear with the mechanized troops moving that direction. Okay. Okay. Come on, tank. God damn it! You couldn't finish this fucking one unit off? Ugh. That's frustrating as hell. They hold Grozny because of bullshit. Bullshit! 2 attacks from a good armored unit couldn't finish the fuckers off. Alright. Just see if you can strafe those guys. Alright, we're pulling back a little bit in the south here just to sort of realign some of our positions. We didn't really do much damage there, which is frustrating. We did bloody this unit south of Stalingrad, and we did nearly destroy the unit in Grozny, but we weren't able to finish it off. Okay. Meanwhile, let's not forget in Finland to reinforce this guy. Max strength. Move this Finnish garrison down this direction. Reinforce the other Finnish troops we have, and hopefully Helsinki holds for another turn. Alright, we can't reinforce them. Alright, we'll just hold them in place then. Why can't they move? Ah, shit, they have no supply. to think about what to do with those guys. Hey, I can swap them and move them. Unfortunately, now these guys are going to be fucked. But I'd rather an Italian corps get destroyed than a German one. Alright, so that probably does it in the Balkans too. Hopefully this heavy armor unit can come up and kind of save the day. Meanwhile, I don't really want to attack these guys, do I? Or do I want to attack Vladimir? I don't really know. Can we upgrade these guys to a level 3 tank? Doesn't really change. It's only 25 MPPs to do it. Definitely need to upgrade those mechanized troops. I'd really like to upgrade all of these tanks. Apparently you can't upgrade though when you're adjacent to an enemy. Let's try and destroy this guy here. Alright, there we go. So we only had to use one air unit. And we destroyed those guys. Mainly because I'm trying to widen my front here a bit. So we used one air unit there. We're going to move this headquarters unit forward. So that way we can shift all these HQs to be a little bit closer to the front. I don't know what's better, to upgrade the tank or reinforce it. I kind of want to see if we can take this unit out and then advance and destroy the headquarters unit near Gorky. It's a national morale objective. It also gets us along the rail line to Perm, which kind of flanks the main capital. It'd be an interesting, probably bold, risky thing to do. But I don't want to attack these guys because they're too heavily dug in. There we go. So that unit's destroyed. Destroyed, Will Robinson. Destroy! Okay. Alright, so we'll move this heavy tank up this way. Actually, we'll reinforce this armor unit in Moscow. Alright, so we destroyed one unit there. I don't think I can hit him anymore. Yeah, so we didn't quite destroy the unit there. We'll pull this armor back to reinforce. We're going to kind of halt our advance on Kubanezhev for the moment. We need some time to regroup, I think. reinforce him. He'll launch an attack against the enemy tanks. Alright, so we drove those troops back. These guys will reinforce to 10. Then I hate to spend so much money reinforcing my fighters, but it is a turn that they have a bit of a break. So reinforce those 2 fighter units. Right, they're there for those guys. Alright, well, I kind of feel like that's going to be it on the Russian front. We didn't do a ton of pushing or driving, but we did make some calculated decisions and risks. Again, if I can get in behind, I'm hoping maybe these guys will pull back, and maybe Gorky can fall next turn, and we can have a more northerly advance. We could even move to the east directly from here, drive directly on Perm and Kubenezhev at the same time. But I really don't think... I don't have the strength to do what it is that I need to do either. That's the problem. So we're in a bit of a pickle, if we're being honest. Yeah, we're in a bit of a pickle here on the Eastern Front. And I don't know what we're going to do about it. I can definitely still inflict damage, I don't have the strength to keep driving east. It's basically the historical 1943 now. So we did those sub-activities. What about our sub in the ice pack in the north? For fuck's sake. There's destroyers everywhere. Alright, did we do anything in North Africa? I don't think we did. Honestly, I need to pull out of North Africa. Can we operate our bombers to the Eastern Front? We can. Honestly, I think I need more tactical bombers in the south for the moment. I can free up some... if I can take the Caucasus, I can free up 4 or 5 units to shift them north and give me a little bit more strength. So I think that's going to be the focus here. Okay. The other question becomes if I can actually bring enough forces to bear. So, we'll have the Italian army there be our rear guard. Or if I can actually cross the Mediterranean here. Got an Italian headquarters unit here. I think we just see if... well, we can bring... we brought them right back to the mainland, so that's encouraging. They'll act as the defense of Italy. going to take a few turns to pull out altogether. So I'm going to try and bring Rommel's at headquarters to Tobruk. And pull him from there. Meanwhile... do we even really still... I really don't want to continue wasting effort on diplomacy for Italy. Or for anyone, really. If I'm pulling out of the Middle East, there's nothing that Syria is going to be able to do to help. Look like Italy can afford anything else. Are they building anything? We're going to get a tank unit in August of 43 if we're still alive. So that'll be nice. I'm going to save that Italian money and buy something more meaningful, I think. Alright, meanwhile, to the Pacific. Okay. Alright, so we're going to move this headquarters to Bangkok, which will give us really good supply at the front line, dealing with the British in Burma. Go ahead and reinforce our troops there. And then we'll see about driving into the heartland of Burma. Meanwhile, we're trying to take out this American base at Suryang. So we'll see if we can knock out this enemy fighter. Okay. I don't know where the American Navy is. Alright, there we go. So he's dead. Send our transport over there to retake Soryong. Alright, so we retook that spot in the Dutch East Indies. I'm going to put those guys on transports too. Reinforce our aircraft. Our air wing there is the one that's lost the damage. Can these guys upgrade? They can. Nice. Now this is the one scenario where I feel like anti-aircraft makes sense when you're upgrading these ships, because anti-aircraft for ships are important because presumably they're going to come under American carrier attacks. Okay, so we do need to reinforce some of these guys, but this turn was mainly about upgrading those units. And spending all of my money on upgrading my navy. Okay. 2 battleships nearby. Alright, so this guy needs to go to a port that he can actually do something at. And that's the Japanese Navy turn. Now it's into the Chinese theater. Whoa. We'll do that. Okay. Alright, so we destroyed the first Chinese unit between us and their capital. Now we'll move an army up toward the border of Langkao, and we'll start pulverizing the actual city, which his troops are pretty heavily dug in at level 3. There's going to be interceptors, but good thing we have escorts. Okay. Now we probably won't do much in the way of damage against the actual unit, but we may at least impact... I guess we're impacting their economy. That wasn't really my goal. It was more about destroying their supply. But we did knock out 5 of their of that hex's supply points. Try and dive bomber them to death. Maybe drop their morale a bit. Nice. That was an effective long-range fighter. So this guy's entrenchments are not all gone, but they're partially gone. So we'll attack with that army unit there, and that'll bring him down to level 9. It'll also bring their entrenchment down to level 1, so they can move it if they want. But if they do that, they're probably just going to take unnecessarily losses next turn, because they're going to have no entrenchment. Meanwhile, this troop to the south, whatever the name of this city is, let's try and destroy these guys. So we'll attack there with a level 3 experience unit. We'll swap this guy out. There we go. That unit's destroyed. Reinforce these guys. Can we destroy this Chinese headquarter unit? That would be great if we could. Not quite. Oh, we didn't actually bomb with all of our aircraft. I forgot about some of them. Alright, so... I think we need to start thinking about pulling some of these troops back. Like, there's no reason to have this unit here. We'll pull him back. Meanwhile, I don't even know if it makes sense to advance against the Chinese. Alright, this headquarter unit needs to move forward. We need to get a headquarter unit to Changsha. So I'll advance in the south with 2 army units, but we're going to pull, assuming there's no risk of... Yeah, there isn't. We're going to pull these 2 units back. So we're going to pull this army and this corps back so we don't have our whole military stuck deep in the hinterland of China. So we'll have 2 units over in this direction, threatening the southern portion of the Chinese line. We're going to move this headquarter up to Chengdu. These 2 units will move south to help deal with the Indian army, which is coming up. Nice. So we drove them back. These guys have no supply. Okay. We had one other group on ships that we wanted to move somewhere. Well, this is a headquarter unit, actually. So I'm going to move it to Ro Namur. So we've got a really strong defensive position around Kwajalein with a marine unit, a maritime bomber unit, a headquarter unit, and then another marine unit to the west near Eniwetok. So that's a pretty strong position. Move these fighters toward Truck. See if we can scout out where the enemy might be. Okay. Alright, so we're going to transport one of those Marine units in the Dutch East Indies. We've got a German sub which can maybe cause the British in India some headache. We've got to reinforce it next turn. Meanwhile, we've driven these guys back a little bit. It'd be really good to have a headquarter unit at Kwichao. I don't, though, so... The Chungking one is close enough, probably, to lend some aid, but maybe not a ton. I don't know. We'll have to see. Alright, so I think that'll do it for May. The Japanese theater was much more encouraging than I think the Russian theater was. I would not be surprised if we don't take this next Chinese capital next turn. The main question is if we'll be able to get enough troops west to Umrichi to knock out the last Chinese capital. A lot will depend on how the weather holds for us, but if we can concentrate our entire air force on the Chinese at Langkao next turn, then I think they're in a bit of trouble. So ideally next turn we take Ningxia, we take Langkao, and we continue driving west. I almost would rather wait to take Langkao though and destroy some of these other units around it while if we have the ability to drive westward with the units to the north here. It would require knocking out Ningxia and then kind of going up and around these troops towards Xinghai and then Guizhou and then toward Umrichi if that's possible. I'm not sure. In any event, I think that'll do that for this turn. So May 7th is out of the way here. And we're going to be closing in on June of 1943. Next turn, hopefully we can also reduce this British unit at Grunen with the use of our cavalry, although I'm hoping their supply drops by one more. That would be ideal. And getting this heavy armor north to hopefully deal with these Soviet units that are threatening us over there. Where are we looking at? Like, the Germans have other units in production, right? So not till August we get... In August and September, we get another army and we get another heavy tank. It's not ideal. We can actually do level 3 heavy tanks now, too. Interesting. I just don't have enough money for any of this stuff. Meanwhile, the Soviets didn't really get much stronger that turn. I think they added like 1 or 2 units, so they just barely stronger than they were coming into the previous turn. Germany still has more units, but they've got a lot of additional garrison forces. It'd be real great, actually, to bring Turkey to our side. What do they look like from a diplomacy perspective? 15% swing toward the Axis? Is it worth investing diplomatic effort in them? I mean, it would have to be Italy. Germany and Japan. Well, Japan has some, but I don't have any money for them right now. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. There's no point in investing in it this turn. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, we're going to start pulling the Africa Corps out, and hopefully we can get it back to the mainland and then operate them to the front. If we can reinforce these guys, it would be really great to have some really experienced cadres of a new corps, artillery, and tanks that we could maybe roll in to finish off the Caucasus. Because, again, if we can drive down here, we can take Baku. Although I guess this is Soviet too, so then we have to drive to take Tehran, wouldn't we? And then if we took Tehran, we'd have a border with India. Good God, we would just never escape. We'd be back in the Middle East again. Unless we just stick one defensive unit on each of these roads and then move the rest. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. But that's a topic for another time. So thanks again for tuning in, guys, for another episode. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.